5 types of emotional trauma you undergo when you divorce your spouse. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about the emotional trauma you undergo when you divorce your spouse. Most of you think that divorce puts an end to all your relationship troubles. And you might also feel relieved when your divorce is granted to you. But strangely, after your divorce, you feel your life is surrounded by many emotional traumas which you never thought you would experience. Many a time you feel lost because divorce has put a full stop to your relationship that began with intense love for each other. When you dream of everlasting happiness with your spouse is put on its deathbed by a divorce, you feel cynical at the brevity of your love. Your life is not the same after you divorce your spouse. Whatever might be the reasons behind your divorce, you feel your heart bleeding with agony that your relationship with your spouse should end in a divorce court. Shall we look at the top 5 most agonizing emotional trauma you undergo after you divorce your spouse? The number 1 emotional trauma you undergo after your divorce is you feel unhappy for your children. You understand the agony your children must be undergoing when you divorce your spouse. You also realize that your children will be happy only when you stay united with your spouse. But when you are sure that you just cannot stay in your relationship with your spouse, you forget about the emotions of your children. All you want is an out from a marriage you dislike. You bitterly fight it out with your spouse about child custody, alimony, and other financial commitments. You do not realize that your children are the agitated witness to the bitter war of confrontations you have with your spouse. Yes, your children are keenly watching what is happening between you and your spouse and are judging you from their point of view. Your children are furious at you because your divorce means a broken home to them. And your divorce will be separating your children from their other parent whom they love equally. After you divorce your spouse, you see many dramatic changes in the attitude of your children towards you. Your children turn resentful against you. They do not listen to you. Your children do not obey you. They do not like to spend time with you. Your children make many hurting comments about you. All these unwanted changes in the behavior of your children is because of the resentment they feel against you for separating them from the other parent whom they love deeply. When you see your children undergoing many behavioral changes, you often question yourself, should I have stayed in my marriage at least for the sake of my children? But your divorce makes you thinking a little too late. The number 2 emotional trauma you undergo after your divorce is when the person you now have a relationship with is no better than your former spouse. You divorced your spouse with the hope that your next love would be an exemplary person who will love and cherish you. But you find that you have the same relationship issues with your new spouse. Your new relationship is no better than the one you lost. You have arguments. You have fights. You're forced to adjust to the many diversities you face with your new spouse. You break your head that you could have stayed in your first marriage itself. But as always, it is too late. The number 3 emotional trauma you undergo after a divorce is the jealousy you feel when your former spouse is having it good. Though you have divorced, you just cannot avoid following the activities of your erstwhile spouse. You feel you must know what your former spouse is doing with his or her life. With the advent of social media, you can now follow the activities of your erstwhile spouse in detail. When your erstwhile spouse is in a new relationship with another person, it pulls at your heartstrings. You understand that what your ex-spouse does with his or her life after divorce is none of your business, but you just cannot avoid being jealous when the new love of your spouse is better than you in many ways. You're bitter that your former spouse has so easily forgotten you to start enjoying fresh love. The number 4 trauma you undergo after your divorce is when you realize that your spouse was not that bad. You divorced your spouse because you could not get along with him or her. Before your divorce, you felt your spouse was the worst of his or her kind. You had so much of negative feelings about your erstwhile spouse. But as you face your life alone after your divorce, you feel that your spouse is not as bad as you assumed him or her to be. You still have many sweet memories of the good things that happened between you etched in your mind. Before the misunderstanding between you and your spouse happened, everything was fine between you. You laughed together. You had fun together. Both solved many family problems together. Both were loving parents to your children. Everything was lost because of your divorce. I could have adjusted. I lost my marriage because of my impatience and intolerance. Such thoughts often plague you. The number 5 trauma you undergo after your divorce is when you're terrified that you might not ever have a good marriage. In this modern age, after your divorce, you find it easy to fall in love again. But your divorce has made you paranoid with fear that your newly found relationship might fail yet again. When you have arguments with your spouse in your new relationship, your heart skips a beat as you feel it's a repetition of the scenario you faced in your former marriage. Will this marriage also fail? This is a question you often ask yourself when scene-by-scene happenings of your former marriage is repeated in your new marriage. You finally understand that no marriage is perfect and that every marriage has its own pitfalls and drawbacks. All this awakening happens to you only after your second relationship also experiences many downsides and negativities. You must understand that a marriage without adjustments does not exist for anyone. The new relationship you find after your divorce will also last only when you adjust and adapt with your spouse. It would have been better if you had understood this simple relationship trick during your first marriage itself. If you had done so, you could have avoided the emotional trauma you had to undergo because of your rash decision of divorcing your spouse. Did this video make you understand the many emotional traumas you undergo when you divorce your spouse? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.